creativity was my
Yeah.
nature. And so it did find a way. Just took 20 years or whatever for it to happen. Basically, I was sort of getting stage fright with acting. I wanted something that could allow me to have a bit more control over when I do perform in between auditions, so that I wasn't getting all jammed up with anxiety when it came to auditions. And I looked at some other actresses similar to me to see what their background was. And unfortunately for me, or fortunately, all of them had done stand-up or something else. But suddenly I'm on live at the Apollo, they're going to find out you didn't go to drama school, or they're going to find out you don't know what you're doing. I got so much more because I understood myself more as an artist. I've learned so much about the industry because, every creative, naive arrogance. It's just this thinking, how hard can it be? And how hard can it be? It's just a book, just write a book. And then we start, and then we go, my God, how hard is this? So we always get caught out. I wanted to say something about it, and I wanted to use comedy to do it.
Yeah.
To buy into any notion that we should be ashamed or embarrassed about this,
Yeah.
because 50% of the country, or 51% of us are women, and so we're guaranteed to go through something.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about
I'm Nadine Matheson, host of The Conversation, and I know you're keen to get on with the show and watch my conversation. But before we do, I have one small request. Can you please hit the subscribe button? You might already have done so, but if you haven't, hit the subscribe button now. Takes a second, less than a second. Right, thank you very much, and let's get on with the show. Andi Osho, welcome to The Conversation.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. I was telling you that before. I'm very excited that you're here.
I'm excited to be here. Look, mutual admiration.
But Andy, though, my first question for you, though, is not necessarily who you were before you became Andi Osho, writer, comedian, presenter, all of these things. But when did you know that this was the life for you?
That's a good question. When did I know? When did I know? I think that when I was conscious of the thought was probably when I started to only make my living out of doing creative things. And I say it like that because I wasn't doing one thing. I was really having to hustle and create opportunities in lots of different spaces. It was around about 2008, and that was the first time that I didn't have to temp. I didn't have to, my background is post-production and TV production and stuff like that. But I left that, and when I did and became an actor, I had to take survival jobs. I was on reception desks and working in pubs, which was weird to do after you've had a sort of solid career to suddenly find. And I loved it, the liberation of having no responsibility. But those survival jobs, they kept me going, and until I was able to switch over to just earning everything from doing creative projects, little writing gigs here, a little bit of acting, and then I sort of brought in the stand-up, so that generated income as well. And that's when I realized, I can do this. I can actually earn a living. I can sustain myself. I was paying a mortgage, so I think that was probably 2008. So how long ago is that? Like 20?
I'm a bit rubbish. Like 18 years ago?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then.
So when you were doing, working in post-production, so you're working in TV.
Yeah.
But even though you're working in TV, do you still have that desire, like, I'm supposed to be in front of the camera, not behind it? Or was it just something that you just, I don't know if you just walk into it, the acting, I'll just try it one day.
The thing is, in hindsight, I can see that there was a desire, but I never really listened to it. So for example, I was happy doing my job and I had ambitions in, following that career path. But then if someone said, "Oh, I'm making a little video, would you mind just doing a little voice on it? Or could you do a little bit of acting?" I just thought it was a silly thing to do. And I would always want to do it. Never thinking, actually, there is a part of you that always had wanted to do that when you were a kid and that had parked that desire, And so, it took a while before I really, those desires or whatever came to the front of my mind and I was really conscious of them.
That's so interesting, because when I think about myself, And people asked me, did you always want to write? And I said, yeah, I always enjoyed writing, but I wanted to be a solicitor, a lawyer also. So that's what I was focusing on. But I always wanted to, but I knew I did want to write. I enjoyed books and I liked the writing process. But I'm just thinking for you, like even when you was in school, were you doing drama class and things like that? Or was it just
Yeah, I mean,
open doors?
I loved drama. I loved music. I was in the school choir, you know, so there was a lot of creative stuff going on when I was younger. And I remember writing a book when I was like 6. I think I've still got it. But the thing is, and it's not to blame the environment that I came from, but the messaging, there wasn't any messaging around a girl like you can do something like that.
Yeah.
It just wasn't, it was so removed from the reality I was in that a career in any kind of creative field was just not something I thought was a possibility. And so when I chose my A-level, in fact, my GCSEs, I thought I was going to, you know, go into chemistry because I was doing well. For some reason, I had sort of, you know, resonated with what we were learning in chemistry and was doing well with that. So I thought, well, maybe that's an avenue. And then my A-levels, I sort of chose more creative stuff. But I don't know. I think I was thinking, even then I was thinking I'll be behind the camera if I'm near a camera at all. You know,
Yeah.
I'll get something where at least I can be a little bit, I'll have something that's stable as a career. Because I think that was the messaging, certainly that was getting from my mum is, and rightly so, because from her perspective, she's come to the UK and a lot of people in her position were looking for stability. So of course, that's the messaging you're going to pass on to your kids. And so for me, subconsciously, it was like, yeah, get something stable. But still, there was this quiet sort of creative desire that was sort of bubbling away in my sort of
Yeah.
unconscious mind.
It's like in my head, I can just see it. It's just like all this creativity is just simmering away at you. But you're doing all this, you know, you're doing all these other things because it's true. Like your parents will say to you, they want you to be stable. They want you to have security. And they don't, you know, they'll always say they want you to do better than what they've done. They want the best for you.
Right.
So there's all that. And you grow up with all of that in the background. So I can understand it. But then if you've got this creativity just simmering away and quietly, it will come to the surface, which is clearly what it did.
Yeah, well, that's what I realized in hindsight. At the time, I was just not thinking in that way at all. I thought, and even some of my peers, when I was doing my A-levels, they then went on to go to drama school, which given what I know about myself now, would have been the sensible next step, but it just didn't occur to me to even apply.
No.
Just did not click. I was like, I went to Ravensbourne, so this is a college where it's more focused around design, and they have different schools, and one of the schools is their TV school, which teaches you how to make TV shows, but more from a technical perspective. So we're learning about cameras, we're learning about sound. We're not necessarily learning about how to write a show, how to create a show from a creative perspective. It's all operational, you know? And yet when one of my peers would say, oh, we need someone on camera to pretend to be a news reporter, or we need someone to do this, I'll do it.
You do
Still
it.
not clicking, still not clicking. And
But you know
I
what?
got to tell you,
Go on.
I got to tell you this though, that we had a class reunion. So this is like 33 years later or whatever. We had a class reunion, and we got so many of my classmates together, and it was such a beautiful evening. But the hilarious thing to me was, as I was going around talking to everybody, pretty much to a man, everybody was doing what they had loved at college. The person who was into cameras was now a cameraman. The person who was into sound was now a sound person. And I thought it was hilarious. So I was like, I was so on the wrong course. I so should have been at drama school, because I'm the only one who's just like not even in the wheelhouse of doing. I didn't even know what I wanted to do then. So I sort of fell into post-production.
Yeah.
Because it was a sort of the ugly cousin of all those other sexy, like camera, and not to disrespect people in post-production, but you know what I mean? Like, the cameras was considered the sexy thing, and sound was the sexy thing, and graphics and stuff was all sexy. Post-production was like that's the cleanup service that happens at the end once everything's been shot. That's how people treated it. I'm not saying that's how it is, but so that's where I ended up. But everybody else, you know, they
doing what they
pretty
wanted.
much they knew what they wanted when we were at college, because they applied specifically because they wanted to be in this really good sort of training environment for that specific thing. But I was just like, oh no, it's near television. It's a television adjacent
So that
sort
will
of thing.
do.
So that'll do. Yeah. I mean, I was 18, so yeah.
God, I'm just having like flashbacks to growing up because I grew up in Deptford, and you know that the Albany Theatre at all.
No, I don't actually. No.
All right, so near literally walking distance is a theatre called the Albany, and there's
Uh-huh.
always something going on. And then there was a drama school literally around the corner
Mhm.
from me. And even though I had no interest, I say I have no interest in like acting and stuff. I would go to the Albany because they would do drama classes like after school. And I would
Mhm.
go and do drama. And then I must have been about 9. I was in a play. And I remember just being really annoyed and clearly because I just like talking and they didn't give me enough lines. They gave me one line in this whole, and it was 3 nights I had to turn up there.
Right.
For this play. And they gave me one line. But
I love it.
not enough for diva. And I was like, oh, one line in this 90-minute, how long it was. Right. But I think for me, probably because I didn't realize that maybe writing books and writing could be a career. The nearest thing I could see attached to that was the drama. And because of, I think, just the community where we live, but it was just always at the forefront, like the adventure playground across the road. In the summer, there'll be a theatre company doing Shakespeare at night, and you could go there and watch
Mm.
the at night. So I think because it was always around me, to me, I thought, oh, well, drama and acting is accessible, which is weird, but writing a book, not, because I don't know anyone who's written a book, and no one says
Mhm.
to you, oh, you're good at English, Nadine. You know, you're good at characters, you're good at dialogue. How do you feel about writing? So it's just weird how much your environment can affect you, but in different ways.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Because,
Mm.
you're so malleable and absorbent at that age to
Yeah.
ideas. And you're also, I guess, looking to create your belief systems about the world. You're not conscious of that, that's what you're doing, but that is what's happening. And so if you're being fed, constantly ideas like people like us don't do things like that, you believe
Mm.
it because you're so
Yeah.
malleable. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened. But like I say, I don't blame the environment that I was in. It just is what it
No.
is. But nature finds a way, as Jeff Goldblum
It's
says in
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park. Yeah. Yeah. And but it's true, like that was my nature. Creativity was my
Yeah.
nature. And so it did find a way. Just took 20 years or whatever for it to happen.
But then also as well, it shows the people. People say, oh God, it's too late for me to do this. It's too late for me to write a book. It's too late for me. I know, even just to change the career. I want to be a teacher, but instead I've been an accountant for God knows how long. Like, it really
Mm.
is, it is never too late to do
Mm.
anything.
My mum wrote her autobiography
Oh
I
yeah,
think
I
she was
saw.
81. Yeah, so it's like,
Oh
she's a published author at 81, and we're going around selling her lovely book, and it's never why too late? That's just a story people
yeah.
tell themselves, to maybe comfort themselves for making certain choices.
Mm. So you know when you're now pursuing the acting and you're doing the comedy as well, which I think is crazy. Because
Oh,
you can
yeah,
go
so
on
this is
YouTube
yeah.
and see you on stage
Yeah,
doing your
yeah.
comedy routine. Did you know that was
Yeah.
in you?
Do you know, I mean, I've loved stand-up from when I think from Eddie Murphy onwards, like
Oh,
as soon as I was
yeah.
aware of Delirious was the one. That was the one that really sort of like just captured our attention in the UK. Everyone was quoting it at school.
Is that the one he's in
So
the red leather suit?
in the
Or is
red,
that
yeah,
Raw?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, Raw is in the
Oh no,
black and
Raw.
purple.
Yeah.
That's when he's talking about ex-wives. Something happened to Eddie between Delirious and Raw. But in
Might pull it on. And then he must have sworn. And next thing I knew, Dad he paused the video and he sent us upstairs. It was
I said for that.
years. He was
Out.
like, enough of that for you lot. Oh, it was
But I
years
love the
later
fact
when
that
we watched Raw.
he sends you away rather than put something else on so that
No,
you
it's
could all watch that.
time for your
That's
bed.
brilliant.
He said it's time for your bed.
Yeah, yeah. But
Sorry,
yeah,
I
so, I
interrupted.
mean, no, it's cool. I mean, I loved stand up, so it wasn't like a natural progression. There was a lot of basically I was sort of getting stage fright with acting. I wanted something that could allow me to have a bit more control over when I do perform in between auditions, so that I wasn't getting all jammed up with anxiety when it came to auditions. And I looked at some other actresses similar to me and to see what their background was. And unfortunately for me, or fortunately, all of them had done stand up. I was like, well, I'm not doing that. And then just something, again, nature finds a way. Something in me just propelled me forward. And I did a course, and then I thought, all right, well, I'll just see how it goes. I had no ambitions, no idea of where I wanted to get to. I just literally took one step in front of the other, and next thing you're being offered something else and something else and something else. And suddenly I'm on Love at the Apollo. Not suddenly, it was like after quite a few
Yeah,
years.
but
But
still.
then, do you know? But that's what it was. I wasn't tracking some ambition. I was just tracking, well, what happens if I put my next foot in front of the other, and then the other and the other, and then you
Mm.
just end up in a place.
I, the comedy thing goes wild though, because in my head, if I'm suffering from the whole stage fright thing and anxiety, in my head, the natural progression is not to go on a stage where the spotlight is solely on me and tell jokes and hope that people laugh. I'll be
See, now you
thinking,
put it like
let me,
that. Fine. Yeah.
maybe I should go and, no, is there a therapist? I don't know. It wouldn't be to go on
Yeah.
a, like onto me, like on a bigger stage where it's all eyes on you.
Do you know, that is such an interesting thought. I have never seen it like that. To me,
Yeah.
it made sense. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm more of an what do you call it? Exposure therapy type of person. I just chuck
Yeah,
myself
you
in
must
the deep
be.
end.
But I wouldn't do
But you know,
that.
I think coupled with the fact that I love stand up anyways, maybe that was why, maybe that was what.
Yeah.
But also, you got to remember, like, the fledgling or open mic part of the stand up circuit, you're playing in front of 5 or 6 people some nights. The gigs aren't big. They're just,
Mm.
sometimes, there's more comedians waiting to go on in the room than there are audience, So it wasn't, they're quite low stakes in that regard. And like I say, I wasn't thinking about, oh, I hope I can get onto Mock the Week. I was just thinking, I just want to be performing, because obviously as an actor, you can't, it's not like playing the guitar where you can just sit in your bedroom and act. Like you can't, you
Yeah.
have to have infrastructure around you to be able to do it, which means opportunities are fewer further in between. And so for me, the logic was, I just need to be performing constantly to be able to
Mm.
short circuit this anxiety or whatever it is that's happening. And so that's more where my head was at, rather than, the good point that you made, that I was throwing myself from the frying pan into the fire.
Really, it looks like a fire. It's a bonfire. Because
Yeah,
I'm thinking
exactly.
me on stage like that, like, no. And also, when I think about when I'm training the baby lawyers and I teach them advocacy, and there's always bust them in half. There's going to be half of the group. They got no problem standing in front of anyone and doing any kind of public speaking. They're not bothered. But there's going to be half. They won't even look at you. Like they just hate it. And a
Mm,
lot of not the battle. A lot of what I have to do is just instilling like confidence in them, and also
mm.
making them realize no one's really waiting for you to screw up on there. And once you kind of get that into your head, it kind of settles them a little bit. But it's not easy being at all.
No, apart from stuff that will cause you physical harm, it's one of the biggest fears that people have is
Yeah, that mm,
speaking in
uh,
front of other people. So you actually, like on a lot of comedy courses, you'll get people who are literally like, I'm doing a best man speech, I'm doing this type of thing, I'm doing a TED talk or a TEDx talk or something, and I
yeah,
just need some tips to be able
yeah,
to do this.
yeah. I always say to them, to the baby lawyers, I said, if you're doing an application for the judge, they don't look. You don't have to look directly at the judge. I said, look at a little spot just above their head, so you don't feel as
Mm.
you're having like a staring match at them. And it's just little things like that. I think people always, you're just looking for tips, aren't you, to help you get
Well,
through
that's it.
that
Yeah, I
position.
mean, it's also a mindset thing as well, I think,
Yeah,
because, I mean, I remember an acting coach saying that, if you are becoming self-conscious in a performance, to put your attention on what you're trying to achieve, put your attention on the other person. And for me, that really helped because it was like, yeah, it's not about me. It's not about how I'm feeling, or that makes the performance uninteresting. It's really about what I'm trying to do to the other person or give to the other person or have them experience or receive.
Yeah. So when you're going through all of this, how do you manage? Because being in post production, I don't think you're going to be dealing with like rejection and imposter syndrome or anything like that. But when you now move in front of the camera and now you're going through that process, so you're going for auditions, you're doing your stand-up gig, which I still think is crazy, but you're doing your stand-up gig. What is it about you that made you able to just keep on going?
Um, I treated it a bit like a game to start
Yeah.
with. Not as in I wasn't taking it seriously, but I was playing. So because I had so little money, I'd gone from having, a regular salary to so little money that all my attention was on how can I pay my mortgage this month?
Well,
What can I do
yeah,
to make, you know what I mean? So I didn't have time for worry. And also I was young, so I wasn't sort of concerning myself with, I wasn't getting, I don't know, worked up about stuff. I was just, all my attention was on this new game, this new thing. How could I
yeah,
build a career? So it was almost like the game was build a career. Um, but did you ask about rejection as well? Like
yeah,
how I
rejection and
felt I
imposter
could,
syndrome. Yeah,
well, I mean, I will say that I did experience like very strong imposter syndrome for a really long time with acting because I didn't go to drama school. I did
mm,
lots of little workshops and training and stuff like that that was really helpful. But really, until I started doing stand up and had success with that, I felt like I was gonna get found out basically for a really long time. So basically, when I started acting 2003, right up to, I would say, probably 2010, so 7, 8 years in my acting career of feeling like an imposter. And it was only when I'd really succeeded with stand up that I felt like I'd done road miles, enough road miles as a creative, that actually I started to trust myself and feel like, oh,
yeah,
I can, I do belong. I am entitled to be here, sort of thing. But yeah, and it was a drain on my energy actually. In some ways of just worrying about that quite a bit. So even though I say, I treated it like a game, I think once I started to get work, particularly acting work early on, there was always this niggling. They're going to find out. They're going to find out you didn't go to drama school, or they're going to find
yeah.
out you don't know what you're doing, or you're not as good as everybody else because you didn't go to drama school. Just constant like chattering in the background.
Not easy though, is it? I always call it that. You feel like you're on shifting sand feeling, and at any
Mm.
moment you could just disappear under the sand. So like everything you've been working on could just disappear because you said you've been found out. But then you keep you're getting the jobs and you're getting booked because if you go on your IMDb, it's not like it's just like one credit on there. It's quite a
Well,
few.
there is that. There is
There is
that.
that.
But you know what? Like when we have belief systems, we don't use evidence to put the belief together and
Mm-mm.
and uphold it, do we? The scaffolding of our belief system is not facts. It's our
No, no, it's so
interpretation of
true.
stuff, isn't it? So
Yeah,
even if I was getting work, I'd be like, yeah, but this is only the second series of it. If I was really good, I would have been in the first. You know what I mean? Like just to find other ways to undercut the facts to maintain the belief that I had.
yeah. Did you feel that way? Because I've got that you won the Nivea Funny Woman Award in 2007.
This is true,
So
yeah,
even when you
yeah,
get these awards and you get these accolades and so then you're getting booked on jobs
yeah.
and that feeling is still there. Do you think it is? Is it still there now? Or to be able to manage it better?
So yeah, it would ebb and flow. So say something like Funny Women happens,
Mm,
then it's great. On the night, it felt amazing. I remember that, and I remember afterwards, the opportunities that it created. I remember getting a full page spread article in the Guardian about it, and all.
oh,
So
you
there was a lot
did?
of lovely things. I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. I mean, Lynn Parker, who runs Funny Women, she's really great at making sure that her winners get a sort of recognition for the achievement and stuff. So that was really good. But then, as time goes on, you start the belief starts yakking away at you.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always there. So I think that what I've learned in time is that you just have a new relationship with it. And that it's just a frozen part of your being from when you were a child that just wants to be experienced. And so if
Mm.
you can integrate that frozen energy and give it room without indulging it, you'll have a much better relationship with it than if you try and thwart it, because that's just putting more energy into it. And that's
Yeah.
making it wrong. So then you're contending with maybe guilt on top of the feeling that you're having, or sadness or anger on top of the feeling. So I sort of go for just having a relationship with it. It's just there. It's just one of those things. It's just quietly gurgling away in the background, but it's not as powerful because it's been given a little bit of room. I think that's
Yeah.
like a way of, that's how I've sort of found a way to relate to it without it sort of overtaking things.
Yeah.
And actually, there are sometimes good things that can come from it, because then, you know, in a way you could say, oh, well, that's what's kept me wanting to improve my craft and get better at, you know, my job or whatever. So it's not like it hasn't served me as well. But I
Yeah.
suppose what you don't want it to become is some toxic thing that is dictating how you behave and how you
Yeah.
feel about yourself and about your work.
Yeah. How did your family respond to it when you started
Yeah.
making the transition through all these creative endeavors?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, my brothers were on board, very excited. I remember my oldest brother was like, "Ah, right, this is what you need to do with stand up." You know, when I started doing stand up, he's like telling me, I was like, "All right, mate." But
Everyone's an
my
expert.
mum, well, that's it. But my mum was concerned, because I think she
Mm.
just didn't understand what I was getting into. And obviously it's not stable. And
Yeah.
like I said, like what she was trying to instill in us was create stability. So the idea that one would choose to go into something so uncertain was
Mm.
really concerning for her. And because she didn't understand the world, she didn't, you know, it's funny, you sort of make assumptions of the people. Everyone understands what acting is, everyone understands what, you know, what stand up is and stuff. But I would say stuff, and she, by her response, you could tell she didn't quite understand what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like I'd just say, "Oh, I'm going to do a play," and she'd be, "Oh, which channel is it going to be on?" Or something. You know what I mean? Like she's asking something like that. So, yeah. But when she could see the success and it was tangible, and when, you know, perhaps friends would say, "Oh, I saw your daughter on TV last night," or something like that, I think then it started to make sense. And also,
Yeah.
you know, when she could see that I had some financial stability, because that's obviously a concern for
Mm.
creatives as well, is yeah, you could be having lots of success but actually not the remuneration to go along with that.
Yeah.
So when she could see that I was sort of finding some consistency there, then it sort of eased her concerns, I think.
Yeah. And you can feed yourself. There's a
That's it.
roof over your head.
That is literally it. Yeah, she's not going to perish on this you know, this pauper's life that she's chosen.
So, you know, if someone was coming to you and they're in the same scenario, situation that you were in, and they're thinking about making this transition into this other field, what would your advice be to them? Looking back on how you've done it, what would your advice be?
Oh, I mean, I always say go for it, like
Yeah.
100%, always. But, you know, you have to know what you're getting into. And
Mm.
yeah, I mean, it's never too late, but you've got, I mean, the decision, you
Yeah.
know, and I suppose track your own, trust your own intuition about the choices that you're going to make, and the paths that you're going to go down, or the places where you might pivot and go, all right, I'm going to try this now. But it is a bit of a high wire walk or whatever, a high wire act
Yeah.
at first, unless you're so financially secure that, you know, you can do this on a whim. But a lot of times it isn't like that. People have got homes and mortgages and responsibilities.
Mm.
So but there are also ways of doing it where you're not necessarily risking yourself as much. For me, I'm quite a risk averse person, but I do welcome calculated risks, and I believed in
Yeah.
myself enough that I felt like it was a risk worth taking,
Mm.
and that I
But
can
you know,
always go back. And I think that's something I heard Stephen Bartlett talking about, that when people were talking about becoming entrepreneurs, it's like, can you go back to what you did before? As long as you haven't burnt any bridges, then yeah,
that's
of course you can. Do you know
yeah,
what I
you know,
mean?
worst came to the worst, and I couldn't write anymore. I could not that I'd want to, but I could go
You
back
could.
and
But
be yeah,
even
I could
just,
go back and be a lawyer practicing full
yeah,
time.
but even just knowing that can allay your concerns so that you can move forward knowing that this is a
Mm.
risk that makes sense, because you've always got that as a possibility. And I know people say, oh no, don't have a plan B because otherwise you'll use it. But it's just like, sometimes the plan B is the
No,
reassurance that people need for plan A.
I think have a plan B, have a plan C, have as many
Yeah.
plans as you have. Like, I think one of the best things you can do is give yourself option.
Yeah, I agree
Well,
actually. I think plan B, C, D, whatever, that's called strategy.
yeah,
That's all it is have a strategy. Like, if this doesn't work, I mean, how many times are you not doing that? Like, we do that, don't we? Go, right, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to try this. And if this doesn't,
yeah,
I'm going to pivot to this. And I mean, that's part of being a creative, I think, as well, is you're not so rigid that you're only following one path. If new information comes in, you know, you're going to make
you need to
choices
be
that are
flexible.
exactly.
Mm. So when I like to ask this question now, when did you know that you were a storyteller? Because I think obviously in everything you do, storytelling comes into play. But when did you realize, because obviously you write, so when did you realize that you were a storyteller, Andy?
Whoa. I think that it was something to do with my time in the States, where I went there because I was sort of getting quite sort of fatigued with stand up. I think I had sort of some sort of burnout or something like that. And so I took myself off to the States. And one of the things that I got from being there was this realization about myself, that there was more to me than just stand up. Because stand up is
Mhm.
such a strong identity, and it's one that people have a strong reaction to. You know, like with, for example, with unit drivers, the guys who drive actors to and from set and stuff, they meet famous people all the time, famous actors all the time, and they are not bothered at all. They don't watch telly, they don't really care, or they don't watch dramas. And but the minute they've got a stand up in the back, you know, their reaction is so different, and it's really
Really?
interesting. Yeah. They're like, because you know, when life is tough, are you gonna watch a serious, hard-hitting drama, or are you gonna watch Would I Lie to You? You know? And so
Yeah, yeah.
people who, you know, people need those sorts of shows, and so obviously the comedians are the face of all of that. And so, you know, being able to call myself a comedian was a very strong identity, and it was one that I found very difficult to let go of, because of how, you know, people treat and feel about comedy and comedians. But when I was in the States, I realized there is more to me than that, and that I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't really embody the fact that I'm a storyteller, that I'm a creative, that I'm an artist. But I felt like declaring that felt a bit eggy and a bit cringe, because, you know, as a comedian, you're supposed to not take life too seriously. You're supposed to laugh at yourself and
Yeah.
others and all the rest of it. So then to sort of have this change where I'm going, no, I'm an artist. It doesn't have to be all worthy and sort of hand wringing, but that's how I felt about it. Like, is a little bit cringe. But just giving myself that space allowed me to see how much more creativity and how many other ways I could express that creativity. But I just needed to stop and give myself the room. So in answer to your question, I think that's probably
Yeah.
when and where.
But also for some strange reason, it's not easy to accept the title. So whether it's the title of saying you're a comedian or a writer or an actress, even though it's the thing that you want to do, like I would always, when I was introducing myself to people, and I say in the early days of the books being out, when they asked me what I did, I'd always say lawyer first, and then
Mm.
mumble, I'm a writer. And then it's only, I would say, it's only in the last few years that I've said writer first, and then yeah, former practicing
Yeah.
former lawyer. So it's hard, like, accept you make the title, but then expressing that out loud and telling people this is who you are and this is what you do.
I think that's really true, because I remember when I started acting, I wouldn't even say I'm an actor. I say I do acting.
I do
I
act.
wouldn't even. I do act. Yeah, I sort of do acting, and yeah, I was embarrassed to sort of declare it, because I had ideas about what ideas people would have about me, because I had said I'm an actor. Yeah, but you're right. It takes a minute, because I suppose it's the process of embodying the thing that we say, that inside we know we are, but it's like
Yeah.
it's a different step. It's a different level of confidence in your abilities and your creativity to confidently declare it.
Did you ever consider staying in the States? Because you know you'll see so many, I'm talking about Black British actors, leave here. Like the amount of people who are surprised. It's always American surprised Idris Elba. He's British. And
Yeah.
you're like, "What?" You like, he's very British. I remember him. Oh god,
Yeah.
I remember him. What's that program? There was a drama series on Channel 5. Was it Family? Can't
Family
remember.
affairs.
Family Affairs. I remember him on Family Affairs, and that is
Yeah.
donkeys years ago. No one was hardly
Yeah.
watching Channel 5 in the
Yeah.
mid-90s. And I
Yeah.
think he did a vampire thing, Ultraviolet, I think on Channel 4. But the
Yeah,
point
that's
is,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he's been around. So, you see all these Black British actors go to the States and stay there, and their careers have just exploded. Did you ever consider staying, or was it just there for the moment,
Yeah,
for the
well, I
time,
mean,
for a purpose?
I worked there for a bit, so but I found that it was very piecemeal. So right where in the UK I found that I could get momentum. In the
Mm,
States, I found it was quite difficult to get any traction. So I'd get a little job and then there'd be nothing, and then 6 months later there'd be some. But the jobs that I did get were good. I ended up in the sort of DC universe in Shazam
I
and
know.
Lights Out was great. Yeah. So I can't complain about the work that I did, but it just got to the when I got to the end of being there, a few things coincided, and one of them was that self tapes, i.e., actors recording their own auditions at home and then sending them to casting. That wasn't really a thing then because we're pre-COVID. We're talking 2018,
Yeah.
and so I was in the States. I was auditioning for stuff in the UK and sending tapes because I wasn't physically there, and I was going up against people who were in the room, so I wasn't booking jobs, and I didn't
Mm,
have management anymore. I left my management in the US, hoping to level up and just not working out at all, so I ended up with no management, and so, and also just a feeling like, I wonder if my time here is done. I spent the last sort of 6 months, I would say, not acting, auditioning and not getting stuff, and writing asking for a friend. And it just got to the point where I was like, I'm loving having this time to write, but I do need to, be earning money. I do need to still be flexing that creativity as an actor as well. And so because of all of those things, that led me to go home. Had it worked out over there, I guess maybe I would still be there. But
yeah.
because I had a green card, so I was fine to stay. But it just got to the point where, and I was saying tracking your intuition, I felt like it was the right time to go home. It wasn't even necessarily just a logical thing. It was like it feels like now is the right time to go
Mm,
home. And even though I didn't get necessarily the career trajectory or success that I was hoping for, I got so much more because I understood myself more as an artist. I'd learned so much about the industry because every creative industry in the States it's so sort of business orientated, and it's
yeah.
not that we're not here, but it's just a different level over there. So when you've steeped yourself in that, it's a really useful thing to bring back to the
Yeah.
UK.
Are you able to, this sounds a very weird thing to say, but are you able to manage and like separate the creative side of the business and then the actual business? I always say with writers, I think we get so caught up in the romance of being a writer that you forget that it's actually a business until it's publication time and you're thinking, oh my God, this needs to happen and that hasn't happened and we need to do these things and what do these numbers mean?
Mm. I wouldn't say separate because I think of them all as part of the same thing.
Yeah.
And I've actually had my head in the sand quite a bit sometimes previously, like with Asking for a Friend, which was my first book. I didn't know anything about how publishing worked, and so I was just you know what I mean, like the stuff was happening to me, and they'd say, oh, you need to do this and this is going to happen and make some videos, and I didn't really know what was going on. And when I got the breakdown of the royalties, it really took me ages to understand what that was
Yeah.
even, you know what I mean, and read the contracts and stuff. Now I'm the other way, I'm probably a pain in their ass, and like they're being so sweet with me because I'm just constantly asking questions and, "Hey, can we try this? And I'm gonna have a look at the," I realized that, uh, I tell you that the headline of this is that I thought that the publishers did everything. I thought that once you've
Yeah.
written the book, everything is in their hands, and if it does well, that's to do with them, and if it doesn't, that's to do with them too. And as I've gone through books, Asking for a Friend, then Tough Crowd, and now with Most Wanted,
Most,
I've realized you are selling that book with them.
yeah.
And that's for me, that's a real distinction. And maybe some authors already know that, but for me, that was something I had to learn. And so, like, for example, my social media now is very different in the lead up to publication day for Most Wanted than it was with asking for a friend. I'm all over it, thinking of different ways that I can, you know what I mean? Like, we're having competitions and I'm trying to challenge myself to do 10-second and 5-second pictures of the book, and, just find different ways so that obviously the content is different and it still adds value rather than just being buy my book. Um, and work with them, participate with them in the success of the book rather than assuming that it's all on them.
But you're not the only Andy, you're so not the only one. I think any debut out there, unless you've come from publishing, that's your back. I think
Yeah, right.
any debut, when they sign that contract and their book's coming out in whether it's a year, 18 months, 2 years, they're thinking, my publisher's gonna do absolutely everything for me because that's how it works. I've seen too many Hallmark TV movies, and that's what happens. They do
Yeah,
everything. And
everything.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, it will hit the charts and happy life. And then I
Yeah.
think you get to the end of that publication and you realize, oh, that's not really how things work. And I can't just sit back and just expect things to happen. You have to
Yeah.
be involved with your publishers. And then also you can take it upon yourself to do things for yourself in order to make sure your
Absolutely.
book has reach.
Well,
Mm.
yeah, 100%, 100%. And actually, again, like I was saying about the start of my acting career, is I treat it like a game. It's like,
Yeah.
what can I do what can I do? How can I, and explore what works, what's got people's
Mm.
attention, what's got traction. And yeah, just keep playing with what tools you have available to you
Yeah.
to make it work, and maybe even assign a little bit of budget that you yourself have that's independent of what's happening with the publishers to do whatever you need to do. So and that makes it enjoyable. But then I do enjoy that part of it as well, because I like the idea that not only are we creators but we're entrepreneurs with it. And
Yeah.
I know that some creators find that a little bit despicable, like that we have to sort of
No, but
sully
I think you have to
ourselves.
accept that though. I think if you
Yeah,
accept it,
I
it
think
makes the
so.
life a little bit easier as you
I think
navigate it.
so. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Mm. So how did the writing start? Or was that always there too? Bubbling away.
Well, no, I wish it was, but like again, I think it was very similar to the acting, it was sort of there quietly in the subconscious or unconscious even. And then because when I look back, I remember that I started writing round about the same time that I started looking at into acting. And because
Mm.
I was working in a place where the actors were all on set, which was all nearby. We were all sort of in the same location, and that hadn't happened before in other jobs that I'd been working post
Yeah.
production on. And so that was inspiring me on the acting side. But I did notice at the same time I wanted to start writing, and I ended up writing some plays, and I didn't know what I was doing.
I
So,
was gonna ask you, did you know what you was doing?
not really. I mean, I read plays because I studied drama at A level and
Yeah.
stuff. So I knew what a play was. I'd seen plays, but I'd never written one. But I think me and my mum have this same thing. I call it sort of a naive arrogance. I mean, that's probably more me than my mum. My mum's adorable, but like it's this thing. It's just this thinking. How hard can it be? And how hard can it be? It's just a book. Just write a book, and then we
It's not
start,
hard.
and then we go, my God, how hard is this? So we always get caught out. It's not like it's an easy ride. But I mean, I just start. If I want to do something, if I'm interested in doing something, I do maybe a little bit of research. Maybe I'm thinking about it for a while or whatever. And then at some point, just the momentum is there,
Just do
that the
it.
inertia is in me. I'm
Yeah.
just like, I'm going to do it. And what's the worst that can happen? I'll write something and it never
That's
sees the light of day.
that is always what I always say. I'm like, what's the worst? It's why I always get myself into situations. I'm always like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, just
Yeah.
try and see. And
Yeah.
if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And I always say you need a little bit of healthy delusion in this writing life to think,
That's it.
come on, let me, I've read a book. I can do better than this. Can't be that hard. Let me try. Wait,
I can do this.
do
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, healthy delusion, naive arrogance, that's it. It's just the
yeah,
willingness to just give it a go. See what happens. Because sometimes I see people like they'll reply to I've been doing some like writing posts, how I wrote Most Wanted, and some people reply with like that they're writing a book but they're scared, or they're scared to start a book and stuff like that. And I'm like, but scared of what? Like, I
Mm,
wonder if it's to do with the fear of having spent time on something and then it going nowhere or it running aground or something. But I think what people have to remember is, like, for every creative thing that you start, even the goal might not be, or the win might not be finishing it. It might be what you learn, because you'll be
yeah.
a different writer. You're a different writer from the person who starts writing it is different from the person who finishes it, and then who goes on to start the next project. So maybe it's just a byproduct of your learning process.
Mm,
Maybe it's not about now there's a book, you know.
yeah. I also think as well that a lot of people stop themselves from doing things because they're worried about what other people are going to think and what they're going to say. And really,
Mm.
when I go back to my baby lawyers and I say to them, and they're worried about being in the courtroom, and I'll say to them, "Listen, no one's really paying you attention. If it's a busy courtroom, people are going in and out of that courtroom, and they're focusing. Because I've seen it for myself. You're focusing on your own case. You're probably talking to your co-defendant. You need to speak to the prosecutor. No one's focusing on you standing up there doing whatever you're doing in front of
It's
the judge.
so true.
Yeah,
Like, people are thinking about themselves
they
all the
are.
time.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
a
and
lot
I
of
know that because I'm thinking about myself all the time. So, like,
people
I'm not, yeah, yeah.
something I know that I sit there and I'm like, "Who's watching Mike?" Unless Mike does something really bad, I'm watching Mike up there. Everyone's focused
Yeah.
on what they need to do. Um, so you know with your writing, correct? How did that happen? Like your publishing journey?
So, they always say, like, everybody's journey starts differently. So, because people
Mm,
sometimes ask me about mine, and it's just like with the view to how maybe modeling that to start their own. But mine started because of the stand up. So
right.
I met an agent who was like saying publishers are kind of looking for strong, funny female voices. Do you have any book ideas? And we were sort of chatting at an event, and I was like, maybe, I don't know, not really, because my mind was on comedy and it was going so
Yeah.
well that I thought I'm not going to take time out of doing what I'm doing to sit down and spend, months potentially writing a book.
Mm.
But he was so tenacious, and literally over the course of, I would say, 5 or 6 years, every now and again he would just message me, "Got any ideas?" I mean, yeah, no, I
A book.
will. I sure as that. Yeah, and I sort of, sort of throw him a few crumbs, and then eventually he said, "Listen, I know you're in London," because that's when I started living in the States. He says, "I know you're back from the States. Why don't you put something together and I'll arrange some see if I can get some meetings and some interest." So I did that, and I sort of threw together this asking for a friend. Well, it was called My Friend Fancies You at the time. And then I started, well, it's funny because when you throw something together, suddenly you start to like it and go, "Oh, actually,
Yeah, yeah. You're like, "Oh,
oh,
oh,
yeah." So I put this idea
legs."
together. Yeah. And then I sent it over to him. He's like, "Great, love that. And actually, these publishers would like to talk to you about it." It's like, okay. So you know how when stuff starts to move, you start to become more
Mm.
invested
It
because
gets
somebody else is
traction.
now invested. It gets traction. And I had a meeting with one publisher, and they were like, "Really interesting. Love this. Why don't you write 3 chapters? Because obviously I've got no pedigree here. I've not written anything else other than maybe a few short form things that have been on TV." And they goes, "Yeah, write 3 chapters." And arrogant me was just like, not writing anything, okay? I was like, "Yeah, no, 3 chapters in the room." I was like, "Yeah, 3 chapters, absolutely, yeah." And I got out, I was like, "Okay." And then I had so cocky. And then I had a meeting with another lovely publishers, and they were very, very keen to have me. And that's how the journey started. And so I was delighted to sign up with HQ Stories. But, you know, it was only when I started writing, asking for a friend, that I realized I don't know anything about writing books. And I really,
I'm not
really,
laughing. I
and
am laughing.
no, it's ridiculous. I used to read all the time, so I had obviously taken in something, but not enough necessarily to be able to write, even structure a story. Like, I remember
There are
one of the
things
first
you
notes
need
that I
to
got.
learn.
One of the first notes I got back from my dear, dear editor was just like, "Really great start," because they're always like really enthusiastic and trying to encourage you.
In your
"Really
letter.
great start." Yeah, yeah, yeah. But she's like, you know, you need to basically write what the characters are thinking, because I had just written reams of dialogue
Right.
because
That's
I'm thinking in my screenplay kind of
yeah.
head, because
You
obviously
have
I
to
was like,
switch.
you have to switch. And that internal conversation that one might be having with oneself. You know, you need to show what your characters are feeling and thinking.
Mm,
It's like that's like a sort of page one of like the writing manual will tell you that. And the other thing that I learned from asking for a friend as well is that I thought I had to perfect every passage before I moved on. So I would spend hours hand wringing over a paragraph or words here and there.
mm,
And I'd go around telling people, God, it's so difficult writing a book because you have to get it right. And da, da, da. Not
I
realizing, I know
know.
now, just get that first draft down. So I actually spent as much time writing the first 3 chapters as I did writing the entire rest of the book. Because luckily I learned.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was night and day. And then, bash that rest of that story down and then, trust yourself that you can go back and edit. I didn't know that when I started.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's literally, it's all a lesson. Because the thing is, you said, I read books all the time, and I'm telling myself I can do better than this. But when I think about the early stuff that I wrote, stuff that would never see the light of day, and then when I probably sat down and wrote the book, my first book that got published, it's night and day. But I didn't know. It's a silly thing to say. Like, I didn't really know about point of views. So I would have point of views switching. You might have 4 different points of views in one chapter, and then deciding like which voice to use, and thinking about the actual structure of the book. These are all things that I had to learn. I read, but I didn't know it in accordance with how to write.
Absolutely.
So,
Because if something's so well written, like something that we're reading just for pleasure, if it's so well written that you're completely absorbed in the story, your critical faculties turn off because so you're not
yeah,
noticing that there's no head hopping. You're not noticing how beautifully written the internal monologue or internal thoughts of the character are, or the structure or something. You'll just come away just going, that was a great read. I enjoyed that,
yeah,
or I felt something. I felt this, that, and the other. So to be able to appraise, that sort of skilled storytelling and apply it to your own is actually quite tricky
mm,
because if you're criticizing it, you're not absorbed into the story, and if you are absorbed into the story, you're not able to criticize it or to critique
yeah,
it, should I say? So yeah, there's a lot. It's limited. I mean, you can learn a lot from reading other books, but actually sometimes you just have to do and see what's working and what isn't
yeah.
working.
Yeah, I agree. And even just people always ask, like, should I do a course or shouldn't I bother doing a course? I'm like, if you want to do a course, do a course. It doesn't have to be a
Mm.
degree. Do a short course. I got so much benefit, not even from doing courses, but I found like a writing, and it was just sitting with
Ah,
a group of writers, and this is when I learned I'm not good at writing in cafes because we'd meet in this cafe restaurant place, and you'd write for an hour, and then you'd share your work and discuss it. But I learned so much just from that process, just from being able to critique other people's work and other people critique mine. And even that's a baptism of fire. You have to go through that whole process of having someone read your work and giving their honest opinion, and learning
mm,
not to take that personally, even though you do take it
mhm.
personally, because
Yeah,
it's
not
like,
to
I
be
wrote this.
defending it or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so Andy, should I ask you about your book, Most Wanted? Because that's what we are here for. Talk
Okay,
about most,
yes,
which I
let's
am
talk about it.
reading, because I've got my copy.
Oh,
So
great,
I'm gonna
great.
this I've got my proof actually, so I'm gonna show my which I'm reading. So do you wanna tell the listeners of the conversation about Most Wanted? And then I'm gonna ask you some questions.
Sure. So Most Wanted is about a couple who are, they're sort of pretty typical millennial couple. They're sort of in mid-professional jobs. One works at Naya, the female lead. She works for the NHS as in a management role, and Jake is a graphic designer. And they just have this ambition to buy a flat for various reasons. One of which is that Naya feels like to honor the sacrifices her parents have made for her. She just wants to show that she can adult, in a responsible way.
Yeah.
And but they just for many reasons they just struggling to get any traction, and then they just encounter a load of obstacles that mean that their sort of dreams fall apart basically. And so out of pure desperation and frustration, they decide that the way that they're going to get on the ladder is if they start a crime wave. Just a little petty
Oh,
crime wave, just so that, just to tarnish the area and just like take the sheen off these like rising house prices.
I loved it.
And very, very quickly, the whole thing just goes first comically wrong, and then, wrong in kind of quite dramatic and awful
Mm,
ways. But, you know, I yeah, I wrote Most Wanted. It was inspired yeah, it was inspired by my own sort of struggle with trying to find a place. And I was looking in Walthamstow, which, the place that I've set this book is Wixton, which is basically a fictionalized version of
yeah.
Walthamstow, because I think it's like a microcosm of like what's not right about the housing market. Like the fact that these like escalating house prices, even though it's the same property, now it's £1 million for a terrace, which I think is ridiculous. And I was like getting thwarted at every turn, and trying to buy this property. And that's where the idea for Most Wanted came. But really, it was that I was thinking, like, how do young people who are, say, earning
Oh,
35, 40 grand a year, how on earth do they get on the ladder if their salaries aren't going up at the same rate as house prices? Like, where are they expected to live? And then
I have.
I had some neighbors. Sorry, I was just going to say, like, neighbors in a
Yeah.
flat, young folks who were trying to move to a new flat that was a rental, and they were saying they're having to bid. Like,
Yeah.
I'd never heard that people, going for rental properties were having to bid. That was never like, it's like, you take my offer and be grateful, landlord.
Yeah.
That's how it was when I was, trying to rent places. They go, oh, you'd have a bit of back and forth. You try and beat them down, and they try and get your number up. But now people are having to bid, offer 1, 2, 3 months of rent, as a sweetener. So I was looking at this whole thing, just going, my God, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but the UK housing market is a mess. In the rental side, on the sales
Yeah.
side, social housing side, we've got a homeless issue as well. It's just a mess. And so that's really what was the impetus for writing Most Wanted. Now, obviously, because I've got a comedy background and previous books have been funny, I wanted to make sure that it was funny so that it didn't
Mm,
become worthy and all hand-wringy. But that's really the soul of the book, is like, we've got a problem. What are we going to do about it? Because
yeah.
these are the desperate lengths that these two are willing to go to.
Well, before I ask you 2 questions about the book, I didn't realize, like, how crazy the housing market was, 'cause I've lived here, like, where I live, I've lived here forever, and sometimes when you lived in a place forever, you're not really taking much notice of what's going on around you, until one Saturday, someone puts a note through my letterbox, "We really like to buy your house." "What do you mean you'd like to buy my house?" Like, "You can't buy my house." And then my neighbours, he got a note as well. And then he's telling me how much the house in the 'cause I live in the Mews, in the next Mews sold for. And I'm like, "Sure." And then just the other day, I got a leaflet from the estate agent saying, "Oh, we sold a house behind you, which is smaller than my house." And when they told me how much they sold, no, they didn't even tell you how much they sold the house for. They put the price of the house on there. Then they said sold for more than asking. No, I went looking. I'm like, "What do you mean it sold for more than asking?" So I went online to see how much the house was for sale. It was so much money, and people obviously bid for, they offered more than asking for a house that's smaller than mine, and
Hmm.
I'm thinking, "This, I don't get it. I don't
Yeah,
understand it. This is
it's
absolutely
insanity.
crazy." And when people tell
Yeah.
you that they wouldn't be able to afford to buy their own house that they're living in now, but
Yeah.
believe them, because
Yeah.
housing is just crazy.
It is. It is. And that's exactly it. And that was completely what was behind Most Wanted, because, as I was
Mhm.
looking, I was queuing at viewings. Now, part of that was social distancing because it was during COVID, but it was also because house prices went up so much during COVID, because people were it's almost like people thought that this work from home thing was going to go on forever. And so they were looking for, like, oh, we need a loft, we need this, a garden
Mini
office and all the
garden,
rest of it.
yeah,
And so, yeah, and so things just spiraled. And I just thought to myself, like, there's so many things that aren't right here. And I want to, I'm pivoting in terms of genre as well, because my previous books were more rom-coms.
rom-coms. Mhm.
But I felt like something with a social conscience is actually probably more in alignment with me. And so it all kind of made sense to me to write this
Yeah,
book, because I'd had this personal experience, but also I wanted to say something about it, and I wanted to use comedy to do it.
yeah. That makes sense to me. All right, so Andi, what was the biggest challenge when writing Most Wanted?
Biggest challenge, probably, it was a joyful challenge, but it was probably the research.
Yeah.
Because, previous books, I'd sort of based them on my life or things that I'd experienced. So, for example, Tough Crowd is set in the stand-up world, which is one I knew very well. So there wasn't a huge amount I had to research. And I've also, I dated someone who had kids from a previous relationship. So I also knew about some of the emotional complexities of something like that as well. But with Most Wanted, it was all new. There was crime, and
Yeah.
that you stepped in there, and I mean, some of the stuff you told me was so invaluable, and it was fantastic. So there was, there was the crime aspect. There was Naya's dad. He has Jamaican heritage, and I wanted to really serve that his personal history well. He worked in a I wanted him to have had a manufacturing background, because I think that's another thing that's a big deal, is how we don't really have the strong manufacturing sort of history that we used to.
Yeah.
And so I had to find somebody who'd worked either, a tire plant or some manufacturing sort of environment. And he had worked for a tire manufacturer. So we had like 3-hour conversation. He was just such a fascinating man.
Wow.
So I had lots of conversations around things that I just didn't know anything about. Like one of the hero of the story really is an environmental enforcement officer, but I didn't know what they were. I didn't know exactly what their job was. So I sort of found one in the street, and I was like, "Yo, I need your help."
What's the questions?
Yeah, I'm writing a book. And she,
Nothing
to
to
her
do.
credit, she wasn't like weirded out at all. She was just like, yeah, sure, here's my number. And then we had a lovely chat. I sent everybody copies of the book to say thank you as well, because they all made such a massive contribution. I wanted everybody to feel real, their histories to feel real, and the story to be as fantastical as it is. I wanted to ground it as much as I could.
Yeah.
So, for example, there's a character in there who spends a lot of his time on the streets. He's basically been sort of groomed into sort of gang life. And so I spoke to some youth workers and people who've had personal experience of that, so that I could get the complexity of that kid's situation, that he is both victim and perpetrator, which is a really uncomfortable sort of space for him to occupy, for people to read about, because they want to label him one or the other.
Yeah.
And we normally think of kids that have been groomed as just victim, but actually when they become victim perpetrator, it's a sort of much more
funny grey area.
It's a grey area, and it's uncomfortable. So I wanted to get that in there as well. So I'd say that was probably, in terms of a challenge, that was probably the biggest one. But I'm so glad. It was almost a thrill ride to go on, because I was learning so much about lives and worlds that I didn't know anything about.
Yeah. Okay. So if you could if you could spend an afternoon with any of your characters, who would you choose and why?
I mean, probably, I think it could be Sadie, who was the perimenopausal woman who lives in the flat below my lead characters. Because she's so, she was a delight to write, and she's so funny. She just, all the things that, she's just got no off switch or no filter in terms of what's appropriate to say. She goes on this like lentils diet, and she's like, "I'm so sorry, I'm shitting like a police horse." And she will say it. She doesn't care. So she'd be fun. But I really like Jake and Naya. I think together they'd probably be quite a fun couple to hang out with. They're probably Jake a little bit more, because he's obviously the more happy-go-lucky one of the two. But I love all my babies.
Oh, all right. Andi, your final questions. This will be interesting. Are you an introvert or extrovert, or a hybrid of the two?
So I had a new term. Is it ambivert? Where
What's
you're an
ambivert?
extrovert, basically. So an ambivert is where you're an extrovert, kind of an extrovert, but in the right company. So when which is basically what you're saying is a combination of the two. So there are situations where I'll be quite quiet, or I'll find it overwhelming being in a big, busy social situation. But actually, equally, when you find your people, I can be quite extroverted and feel, I suppose it's where you feel safest to be fully yourself. And otherwise, if you don't, you're sort of more guarded. And that's probably me. I think I am probably towards introvert, if I had to choose between introvert and extrovert. Yeah.
And there you are, on stages, doing comedy, doing blue light.
I know. I know. It
How
does
much fun is
seem
blue light?
it's
Before
a
I
lot
go
of
carry
fun.
on.
Yeah, we've just literally yesterday we had the read through for season 4, and it's
Yeah.
funny because Declan Lawn and Adam Patson who write the show, but Declan sort of does a little speech before, and he's like, "I know I say this every time, but this is the best season of Blue Light." So we're just like, we've read a few episodes of it so far, and we're just like, it actually is fantastic. He's just done such a brilliant job. So when the writing's that good, I mean, I'm obviously reading this as an actor who's going to perform it, but I'm also reading it as a writer who wants to
Yeah, I
learn.
was gonna
And
ask. Yeah.
there is so much that Declan manages to get into. Declan and Adam managed to get into the storytelling in Blue Lights. One of which is that they're really good at drawing characters that we've met before and bringing them back round again. And that's probably more enjoyable when it's series TV rather than in a book,
Mm.
because maybe readers would forget that person if it's over several books or something. But they're also really good at making sure that the story is driven by choices that the characters make
Right.
rather than, or feeling like it at least anyways,
Yeah.
and that and so when story unfolds, it feels very organic the way that they've
Mm.
written it. And because it's a police drama, I think people go in sometimes to Blue Lights thinking that they're going to watch yet another procedural, but because they've shaped their characters so well, you sort of forget that they're police, and you
Yeah.
relate to them first as people. You relate to them as people doing the job of police officer rather than it's a police show.
Yeah.
And I think the testament is that in Northern Ireland, the show's been really well received. And actually, for the PSNI, it's actually been, not that we're working with them necessarily, and we're not trying to be a publicity campaign for them, but it's actually been really good. Like, officers are saying that there's a much warmer response from the public
Oh, that's
than
good.
there's previously been. Like I say, I was just at pains to say, but this is not the
Yeah.
objective of the show.
But
But that shows like how well and how rounded the characters are that they've created. So I learn a lot as a writer from
mm,
reading the scripts that we get sent through, for sure.
okay. So Andy, if you could go back to when you were 25 years old and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Therapy, 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 therapy.
I am a firm believer in therapy.
Yeah.
I only had it because if you'd listened to the podcast, people just follow me on social media after the hurricane situation I went through in Grenada.
Right. Yeah,
That'll be
yeah.
nearly 2 years ago now. Yeah, and I
Oh,
came home and I
wow.
was like, yeah, that was 2024. Yeah, and I remember even before I got on the plane home, I was saying, I'm gonna have therapy because it it was a lot. It was a lot emotionally
Yeah,
and to go through
of
that. So
course.
anything for anyone, I'm like, "Let's do for anything,
Yeah.
let's do it."
It's true. But some people do genuinely think, like, what would I even talk about? Like, why do I need therapy?
That's what I
And I think
thought.
they've become so, well, yeah, but I mean, it's very easy to become so distant from your emotional life that
Mm,
it does seem like what is there to talk about? But I think you have to sort of take a leap of faith and go, well, all right, is your life perfect? Is it exactly how you want it to be? And you feel exactly how you want to about everything, and there's no problems anywhere. If that's the case, then great, don't go.
yeah,
But if there's even just a tiny thread, even if you don't know what it is, but you sense something is underneath that really needs to be looked at, just go and then trust that their expertise will help you find what that
yeah.
thing is.
It's a weird thing. I remember even like my first session, I'm thinking, "Oh, we're gonna talk about the hurricane," because obviously that's what I'm here for because,
Yeah,
I lived through a Category
yeah.
4, and that wasn't even it, and you're like, "Oh, you're giving me homework. You're giving me things to do." But the tools they give you, well, the tools that my therapist gave me, it wasn't just applicable to what I went through. I can apply it to every other aspect of my life.
If I think a good therapist will leave you with stuff that permeates outwards from you.
Mm,
And actually, sometimes to the people around you, and that it'll impact on your relationships with them positively because you'll show up differently, and that will give them space to show up differently with you, and so it can transform relationships. So yeah, I mean, I've been in therapy for a while, but there's been times when I thought, actually, yeah, I feel like that this could be a good. I've done other things, like in terms of like excavating some of the
Yeah.
sediment that's in there from life. So it's not like I'm not, you know, I've not been doing any work, but I think whatever it is, that's soul work, so that you can be in life
Mm.
like you can be more available to life. So I don't necessarily, because I was thinking, why do we do therapy? Like, can it become a bit navel gazing? Maybe
Yeah.
that's what puts some people off. But I think if you think of it as this is a service that I'm doing to the people, for the people that I love, then it can stop it becoming a bit of an indulgence, you know,
Yeah.
so that the goal is not, oh, look at my shiny new personality. That's a nice byproduct. But actually, the goal, what's really good about doing therapy or doing some soul work or whatever it is now you're more available to life. Now you
Yeah.
can give more to the people around you. Do you know what I mean? And not be so whatever, you know, was in the way of you know, undermining your relationships or making them more challenging. If you once you've worked through those and started to let those go, now you can be more available for your kids, for your partner, for your
Mm.
friends, for your work colleagues, whatever it is. So then your attention is out there rather than on yourself,
Yeah.
is the thought.
I agree with you. Okay, so this is my new ones I have now. Morning pages or midnight deadlines. So are you early starts with your writing or are you all nighters?
Never all night. I want to cut off. I want to stop. No, so I mean, I've got a puppy. So, well, she's not a puppy. She's 4 years old now. But like, so I walk her in the morning and the evening. So between now, I've got a sweet spot where she will allow me to write.
Mm.
And I like the idea of getting to the end of the day and we're done now.
Done.
You know, yeah, I want to have the evening to myself. There have been times when I've had to work in the evenings on various projects, but I really, because I know the importance of making sure you have rest as well.
Mm.
Rest isn't just collapsing. I don't want rest to be collapse. I want it to be taking time to regroup, to let the brain settle, to let what you've done settle in the body, so that you've got longevity, so that you can keep going for more days. Because
Yeah.
this burning the candle at both ends, you can only do it for so long before it starts to have an impact.
No, I think that's such a good thing though to like reinforcing people. Rest shouldn't be collapse because I can think back to so many times when I was practicing law and I've been doing back to back to back trial. I don't even know my own name at the end of it. And then I've gone to Grenada for 2 weeks. And literally that first week I've just collapsed and I've just slept and I'm not
Mhm.
resting, just like broken down because I'm so exhausted. Whereas now I'm like, I'm taking a break. And it's not because I'm really, really tired, but you need to like rest your brain and rest your body and do other things and then come back to yourself so you can get back to your original task.
100%. If you want any kind of longevity, then you have to have a grown up attitude towards how you look after your well being. I remember someone saying to me once that, you know, you have a body that is you need to have a body that is in alignment with the life that you want to live. So if
Mm.
you, I mean, just on a simple level, if you want to have an active life, then you need to be fit and healthy. You need to not eat certain stuff or eat it
Yeah.
in moderation or whatever. You know, all these and you can get even more detailed with that. You know, if you want to have a brain that isn't, you know, anxious or whatever, maybe you need to think about the things that you're consuming in terms of content, so
Mhm.
that, you know, you can have a restful sleep, so that you can be more available for more interesting thoughts. Maybe you need to eat less carbs so that you don't get a sugar fug at the end of the day or in
Yeah.
the afternoon. So I try and think about those things. I am not a saint in any way and I make my mistakes, but I'm also conscious of I start to be sort of cultivate a sensitivity about what certain things can do. So I sort of, you know, like for example, a new little rule that I've got is that no phone until I've got back from my walk. So that might
Yeah.
be I might not look at my phone apart from turning off the alarm. I might not look at my phone until like 10 in the morning. Because before I would wake up and, you know, it's so
You do
easy
the
to open
scroll.
Instagram and yeah, you start scrolling old text and suddenly I'm on emails and then suddenly I'm replying and the day hasn't even started and I'm already in reactive mode.
Yeah. No, it's true. The only what I do now, I've been doing it for a while, I have the do not disturb set up. Um,
Right.
so and then but also I have the freedom app on my phone. So what I'll
Mhm.
do, it will block out all social media
Oh,
accounts.
that's good.
I'd set it for 10:30 until whatever time I think to like 6. So I can't even if I
Mm.
wanted to, I can't even go on Instagram because it won't let me. And I
Oh,
thought, "I'll
that's
do that," 'cause
good.
yeah, so I do that. Otherwise, all night on TikTok looking at nonsense. You don't need that. You need to
It's
sleep.
so true. Yeah, exactly. So, I think, it takes a while and sometimes it has to be trial and error because as much as people
Mm,
can tell you these things, I think you've got to sometimes experience the cost and then go, if I do that, the impact is blah. And I'm constantly trying different tactics and things and trying different ways of being to make sure that I can get the most out of me for my
yeah,
work, but it is definitely trial and error.
yeah.
And then eventually maybe something even stops working and you have to, I've got to try something else
Try
now.
something new. Yeah. Okay, so when you are writing, is there something on in the background or is it silence?
Jazz. It's just jazz. Anything where there's no lyrics, because obviously I'll just either start typing them into the into the book or whatever. But I like jazz because gentle jazz. I'm not talking about like, sort of
Oh,
Charlie
not
Parker.
the yeah, yeah.
You know, it's very gentle, focused jazz, they might call it on Instagram or whatever. I mean, not in Instagram, on Spotify, which I don't use anymore. But yeah, just to have a nice, I don't really like working to silence unless I'm doing a read through. And then because I
Yeah.
read my own audiobooks, I like to read through 4 or 5 times because I want to figure out my voices as well. So
Okay.
then there'll be nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And your non-writing tip for writers, I always say it could be touch grass.
I mean, it's touch grass. It is touch grass. It's like get out. Don't the non-writing tip for writers is have interests. Be
Mm,
away from the screen. Be into things. You know,
yeah.
because they can feed you in so many different ways, and inadvertently they can, not that this is the reason to do it, but they can feed your writing as well. Because I don't know
Yeah.
why, but salsa dancing is in my mind. And say you started salsa dancing and say you end up doing it for a year or two and say you start to realize, wow, these people are really interesting. It's got its own little micro culture that's fascinating. I'm going to write about this, or I'm
Yeah.
going to use it as the backdrop for a story or even just a scene. So yeah, have other interests outside of writing.
And finally, Andi Osho, where can listeners of the conversation find you online?
Where can they find me? So I am really active on Instagram.
Mhm.
I am doing my perimenopause diaries, which I don't know why,
I've
but I just
been
feel
watching.
compelled to do because I just feel like there's so much that's going on. I've got to talk. I feel like I've got to talk about this. So I
There
do
is
those, and
far
I
too
do.
much going on.
There is a lot
I
going on, right?
I can't I don't know. The other day I was thinking, how do women who are perimenopausal and menopausal write books? Because when the brain fog kicks in, and I have no and it's not the usual, I went upstairs and I forgot what I went upstairs for. It's like I'm in the
Yeah,
kitchen doing something, I'm like, I've completely forgotten. Like, what? And I have to spin around twice before it clicks back
yeah,
in. It's a
yeah.
thing. I don't like it.
I'm gonna say I don't love it either. um, so I mean, in Tough Crowd, I really struggled because I think when I was writing Tough Crowd, I didn't realize what was going on. And I was finding that I couldn't remember what had happened at the beginning of the book by halfway through. And obviously you're setting things up and you want to back reference things and all the rest of it. And
Yeah.
it was really a challenge. So perimenopause and the creative mind, I think that's someone needs to do a little study on that because
Like,
it's a whole thing.
yeah.
But also, I feel like one of the reasons I started my little perimeno diaries is because I do feel like it does look like only a certain type of woman has perimenopause experiences. So I just want to make sure that people see women from different cultures are going through some stuff too.
Mhm.
And it's not that what I'm posting is only for those women, but I want to make sure that someone that looks like me is in the conversation too.
Yeah.
But equally, I mean, I say this at the top of every post. I want to make sure, or I want to help make sure that younger women know what's coming because I had no idea. No idea.
Thing is, I knew about obviously menopause. I have mums, I have aunties, loads of aunties,
Mm.
and I've been
Mhm.
in a room with them when it looks like someone has literally put a bucket of water over your head, and you're like, "You were normal a minute ago," but there's no conversation in regards to peri bit of it. It was just
Yeah.
like, you know, you're just being a woman during your life.
The
And
peri
then,
bit.
yeah, there was no middle bit. That middle bit didn't exist.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so that's what I want to talk about, because for me, I mean, I have had thoughts like, I just want this to be over. Like, when is this going to end? You know? So, and listen, I don't want to scare people who are, you know, in their 30s or whatever, because everyone's perimenopause experience is so different, but it is a lot. It is a lot to go through. And so I feel like just sharing the experience is going to be helpful for folks. And it's cathartic for me to be able to just say it out loud, like, rather than pretend it's not happening. And I refuse to buy into any notion that we should be ashamed or embarrassed about this, because 50% of the country, or 51% of us are women, and so we're guaranteed to go through something.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm going to talk about
thank you very much for that public. What do they call it? PSA.
PSA. Perimeno PSA.
That just leaves me, Andi Osho, to say thank you so much for being part of the conversation.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching the Conversation podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you'd like to catch up on more conversations, you'll find them linked on your screen now. And you can also listen to the podcast on your favourite platform. See you there. Bye.